unfortunately, Raul isn't here.
And can you give us a heads up as to what, if he had made prior arrangements with you for that?
Yeah.
So you were fully aware he wasn't going to be here and he was part?
The meeting process.
A critical step. The nominating process is a process of candidate selection. Nomination is the naming of those who will seek office. This is a very important step in the election process.
The nominating process. The nominating process also has a very real impact in the sense of the right to vote. Voters can make only one of two choices for each office on the ballot. They can either vote a Republican candidate or Democratic candidate. The Victoria remains points of the importance of the nominating process. Many hold general elections. General elections are regularly scheduled elections at which voters make the final selection of the office holders, much as democratic criticism do.
So you guys, on that first point, I'm interested on your take on that. You said the nominating process also has a very real impact on the excessive of the right to vote. What do you mean by that? I'm not sure I understand that.
They can either be two parties.
Exercise, there's a typo. That's the exercise.
Okay, so then my question is, how does the nominating process affect the right to vote then? Why is it an important part?
If I remember reading right, it's because back then there used to be caucuses, and the caucus, it was basically like the party would pick beforehand what people could vote for, but now people actually pick who's going to be nominated. So there's a huge difference.
So it's like direct primary?
Yeah. It's like that. So it's like before we didn't have like as much of a say, but now we do because it gives the party's organization's members like the chance to vote for the nominees.
And since it's, as you mentioned, Ramon, a two-party system, that it really impacts how, who participates in that whole party process. Now, and I know you'll talk more about open versus closed direct primaries, which Joey just alluded to there, but I think that's really important to hit on that, is the whole evolution of the process from, the self-announcement through, the caucus, to the convention, and then eventually to this direct primary. Just talking about that, where and when did people get to participate? That's, I think, a highlight of this section.
Nominations. There are 5 ways in which nominations are made in the United States: self-announcement, caucus, convention, direct primary, and petition.
Self-announcement. Self-announcement is the oldest form of nominating process in American politics. It was first used in colonial times and still found in the small towns and rural levels of many parts of the country. The method consists of a person who wants to run for office, simple announcements. That's fact. Self-announcement is something sometimes used by someone who failed to win a regular party nomination, or by someone unhappy with the party's choice.
Are there some examples of those in history that you guys can point out who were unhappy with who the party picked, and so they decided?
Theodore Roosevelt and Hoover, and the Taft when Theodore didn't like who his party selected, so that's when he created the Progressive Party, and that's how self-announced.
That's very good. What's that?
One of the guys, the last name Adams.
John Adams.
No, was it? There's several guys.
Yeah, there are quite a few. Most recently, or a fairly recent one, was with La Follette, the La Follette Progressives. if you remember that. He pulled off some of the, with Coolidge, I believe it was Calvin Coolidge, or it was either Harding or Coolidge. A progressive La Follette took in a lot of the Midwest and Northwest sections there, picked up about 12 to 19% of the popular vote. So yeah, they can definitely make an impact. They haven't really won, but they can certainly make an impact. In fact, as Joey mentioned with Theodore Roosevelt, he took away enough of the vote from Taft that allowed some little-known dude from Virginia, Woodrow Wilson, to become president.
In history, 4 prominent presidential contenders have used of the self-announcement process. George Wallace, who declared himself to be the American Independent Party's nominee in 1968. Independent candidates like Eugene McCarthy in 1976, John Anderson in 1980, Ross Perot in 1992.
That's actually Ross Perot.
Oh, Perot, sorry. All of the 135 candidates who sought to replace Governor Gray Davis of California in that state's recall election in 2003, and Arnold Schwarzenegger won that election.
Well, I had forgot he was in that. Damn.
Yeah, remember, do you guys know the whole, you can go back for just a minute there, Socorro. The whole reason Gray Davis got recalled from being governor of California, that's a pretty big deal, to have people vote on kicking you out of office. That was the California people who said, get rid of that bum.
Was he in the scandal?
Well, here's the question. California is a very democratic state, okay? It's very blue. How in the world could a Democratic governor get recalled from, you know, a very democratic state? What got the voters so fired up in California?
Was he not doing his job right?
Something happened.
Who was it? Ross Perot?
No, Gray Davis.
Gray Davis. Gray Davis.
Change parties?
He didn't change. No, because to survive in California, you pretty much have to be a Democrat. I know you guys don't pay the energy bills at your house, but believe
You wanted
me.
to hire him?
What's that?
To hire the cost?
Well, he did something. I don't know what happened. California deregulated its energy system. It used to be that they were public utilities. And so they were owned by, basically it was a quasi-government entity, and prices were kept low, you know, because it was government. And then they decided, well, it was getting too cumbersome to run it, so they said, well, let's privatize it and sell it off to companies. Well, they're schizophrenic. They sort of sold it off, but they still wanted to keep control. Government can never let go of control. It wants things to run well, it just doesn't want to let them up. So it said, okay, we'll sell it, but we're still going to control it. And so things were just all kooky in California. And we couldn't get energy, because we're on a grid that is connected nationally. And California did not build, because we're so green, we pride ourselves on being so green, that we weren't building energy plants. Nuclear, coal, natural gas, none of that. And so where are we getting our energy from?
Telephone poles, underground.
No, there's not nearly enough solar panels.
From the
PG&E.
well,
From the well?
See, we're kind of duplicitous
PG&E.
and Hippocratic. No, PG&E is the one that distributes the energy. You have to get the energy from somewhere. Where does most of the energy come
dam.
from?
Hoover Dam? No?
No, you get a little bit of a hydroelectric in
Fracking?
the country, but unless you're from that region, like around the Hoover area or
Those
around
things.
the dams
Windmills?
up
Turbines?
in Washington. Huh?
Oh no, those produce a lot.
Wind does not produce nearly enough. I mean, it's minuscule.
Oil?
Solar is minuscule.
Fire,
Water.
coal.
Coal.
I don't know.
And California is always saying what? Coal is evil. Coal is of the devil. And you don't get your energy from that. That's terrible. And yet, since we won't build our own, we what?
Coal.
Borrow.
Borrow.
Well, you have to get it from somewhere. So there are other states in the West who California is constantly mocking because they say you're evil, you're burning coal to get energy and all this stuff. And so all of a sudden, guess what? California had no energy. And,
Really?
oh yeah, we had rolling blackouts across California. people's neighborhoods would just get wiped out. The grid, they'd shut down whole neighborhoods, cities, and it was crazy. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh crap, we don't have any energy. So like crazy, they started building these natural gas plants, power plants. But how long does it take to build a natural gas plant?
Takes a cool minute.
Yeah, it's a long time. So now, all these states that have been what? Oh yeah, California, you mock us. You pride yourself in being green. Let's see how you do being green. And we had no energy. So Gray Davis went to what's called the spot market. On the spot market, you can buy energy off the grid, but it's very expensive. So he bought all this spot market energy, and he took a beating in the media politically because it cost California a lot of money. And so we were furious. You talk about the chickens coming home to roost. You reap what you sow. We definitely reap what we had no problem just talking about the evils of energy. But when you don't produce energy, what's the result of that?
No energy.
You have no energy. And yet we have these beautiful windmills and solar panels, but those don't produce nearly enough energy. So, anyway, kind of got off topic there.
What happens when we run out of coal?
What's that?
We run out of coal, we don't figure it out.
That's a good question. Why do you think that the government has been, in the past decade or so, has subsidized billions of dollars to these solar companies to make all these solar panels? But what have we heard about several of these solar companies that the Department of Energy has subsidized to the tune of billions of dollars? What's happened to them?
What's happening?
They've gone bankrupt.
My brother works for one.
Does he?
Yeah.
Well, I'm not talking about the solar companies that install the panels. I'm talking about solar companies that actually
Get the
produce-
energy and move it out
Yes.
places.
Yeah.
Mr., what's the difference between primary election and general election?
Well, they're going to get to that.
General elections for like.
The caucus.
If it isn't answered, Daniel, bring it up to me.
The caucus. The second way for nomination is caucus. A caucus is a group of like middle people who met to select a candidate they will support in an incoming election. The first caucus nominations were made through a later period in Boston, 1970.
I don't think your date is correct on the caucus there. Caucus was an older institution.
Maybe
even
1870s?
1790s.
God, there's to be a convention.
1720s. You guys have 1970s. But right
God,
here,
think there would be a convention.
this is the first caucus nominations were made during the later colonial periods, probably in Boston during the 1720s.
Yes.
So make sure you guys are clear on that date. The caucus was
1920.
not the 1970s. Be very clear on that.
I repeat, 1920s.
It still wasn't.
Originally, the caucus was a private meeting consisting of a few influential figures in the community. The legislative and congressional caucuses were quite practical in their day. Criticism of the caucus reached its peak in the early 1820s. Andrew Jackson, Henry Clay, and John Quincy Adams boycotted the Democratic Republicans caucus that year. Jackson and his supporters made King caucus and leading campaign issue. William H. Crawford of Georgia became the caucus nominee at a election attended by fewer than 1/3 of the Democratic Republican Party's members in Congress. The caucus is still used to make local nominations in some places, especially in New England. There a caucus is open to all members of party, and they only mostly resembles the original closed and private process.
So what's the deal with the caucus? In your own words, Ramon, what did you see happening in the caucus that was either,
It's
Democratic or non-Democratic?
Well, it's a group of people who elect the person, the candidate, and I guess they could be either, like Democratic and.
So you're saying there's a Democratic caucus and then there's a Republican caucus, or back in the day it would be like a Federalist caucus or a Democratic Republican caucus?
Yeah.
Well, is that a very democratic way to get someone on the ballot?
think so.
Why not?
'Cause
How many people are involved in the selection and the placement of that potential nominee?
Whoever the party
Not
members
many.
are.
Yes, the power brokers in the party, right? They call the shots?
Yeah, the shot call.
Shot callers, yeah.
So they're like, they go out there and they just like, oh, let's nominate this guy and we'll all support him and all that?
Yeah.
That's all they do?
Yeah, in fact, one of the cartoons often you'll see of caucuses is in this back room that's dark. You got guys smoking cigars and drinking whiskey and making all the decisions in the back room for the party and stuff. So that's kind of the caucus mentality.
Did they know
Caucus
that?
lifestyle.
The convention. Another way of nomination is convention. Convention took place of the caucus when it collapsed. The first national convention to nominate a presidential candidate was held by a minor party, the
Masons. That's for Daniel. He loves the Masons.
I know he's
So
gone.
that's like-
in Baltimore in 1831. The newly formed National Republican Party also held a convention later the same year.
And keep in mind here, so you can see that the convention came after the caucus. That's why I think you inverted the 1970s to the 1790s. So the caucus evolved into the convention, right?
Yeah, it replaced. All major parties' presidential nominates have been chosen by convention ever since. In the 1840s, convention had become the presidential means for
Comment on the
yeah,
nation.
for common nomination at entry level in the military.
the convention process. The convention process seems perfectly suited to representative government. At the county convention, the delegates nominate candidates for county offices and select delegates to the next ring on the convention ladder, usually the state convention. State conventions also send delegates to the party's national convention, where the party selects its presidential and vice presidential candidates.
You know, it's interesting. I know these folks. My daughter participated in this in Merced. They have a group that this lady works with kids on like dancing and singing, and my wife put her in it. Well, she was telling us how her parents were put as delegates to the GOP convention, where Governor Romney was, put in as the GOP nominee. And she was telling us all the things they went through. It was really interesting. If you ever guys get the chance, whether you're a Republican or Democrat, to go to the convention and to be a delegate, I mean, that's really quite an experience, sounds like. You can also do it at the local level, also at the state level, too, to be a delegate. So.
Delegate just means that,
Like a member? Or representative?
like a representative.
A representative of that party, and so, for instance,
Willing to nominate others. From
Right.
that party.
to select the candidates from that party.
So it's like basically like, oh, we get together in a group and we're like talking about all these people, and then we're like, all right, Sergio, you're gonna go and you're gonna basically be our voice. And so Sergio will go and he'll like be nominating the people that we kind of talked about that we like.
Yeah, either from if you're a Democrat to the Democratic convention,
Mhm.
or if you're a Republican to the Republican convention. Yeah.
By the 1970s, the convention system was itself under attack as a major source of able and American politics. By the 1910s, the direct primary had replaced the convention in most states and the principal nominating method in American politics. Conventions still play a major role in the nominating process of some states. States like Connecticut, Michigan, South Dakota, Utah, and Virginia.
The direct primary. Another way for nomination is direct primary. Direct primary is an inter-party election. It's held within a party to pick that party's candidates for general election. Wisconsin held the first direct primary law statewide in 1903. Many other states soon followed the direct primary law. In most states, state law requires that major parties use the primary to choose their candidates for the United States Senate and House of Representatives.
State laws also require for membership and all other states officers and for most local officers as well. The states usually set the dates on which primaries are held and irregularly conduct them too. The states provide polling places, election of official registration desks and ballots for places to police the process.
Again, who handles all the elections, even if they're national
The
elections?
state.
The state, yeah.
Forms of direct primary. There are two basic forms of direct primary which are used today.
The two basic forms, the closed primary and the open primary.
I think you're missing a D on the closed primary.
Oh, sorry. The closed primary. The closed primary is as parties nominating, electing, and which only declared party members can vote. The party's primary is closed to all but those party members. Today, 24 states provide for the closed primary. In most closed primary states, party membership is established by registration.
Do you know what that means?
You have to be registered to.
Right, so let's say, Ramon, you go and register as a Republican, and that means you cannot go on the primary election day in May or April or whatever, and go vote for someone in the Democratic primary. You have to stay with...
Yeah.
But you could change in some states, can't you change your party on the date of the election?
Yeah, again,
But if
there are
it's a
50
closed
different
primary,
states,
though.
and I don't know all of them, but yeah, I'm sure that's an option, that you could change it. But once you change, you can't then go back and vote for, it's just that closed primary states don't want you crop, because in some states what they found out is if like Ramon's a Republican, and he really wants a poor Democratic candidate to be the nominee, he could go vote for, someone who wouldn't have as good a chance, and they could swing the election so that the Democrats would then put up someone who's not going to be as competitive, against Republicans.
So,
Just a way to safeguard the integrity.
so rating,
Huh?
rating. Rating people going to.
Yeah, rating, yes, exactly.
In some of the closest primary states, a vote can change his party registration on the election day.
That's what that yellow says.
Yeah.
Yeah. The open primary. The open primary is a party's nominating election in which any qualified voter can cast a ballot. It's the form in which the direct primary first appeared. It's now found in only 26 states. When voters go to the polls in some open primary states, they're handed a ballot of each party holding a primary. They receive two ballots, those of the Republican parties and those of the Democratic parties. Then the voter votes with privacy in the voting booth. He either votes Republican or Democratic parties.
So, Mr. Rogers, in the primary elections, people vote for the nominees, and then those nominees that won go into the general election for everybody to vote?
Yep. Yep, that's exactly right. And in California, it's kind of a hybrid, because in California, if you register, the Republican Party, you have to be registered as a Republican in order to participate in their primary. But the Democratic Party, probably because they just dominate, it's like, it doesn't matter what you're registered at. If you want to participate in the Democratic primary, feel free. You can go in and do that.
Because California is so blue.
Every state use different version of the open primary called the blanket primary. The blanket primary, also sometimes called the white open primary. Washington adopted the first blanket primary law in 1935. Alaska law with it in 1970. California as well in 1996.
Is the blanket primary or like a type of primary?
That's what he's saying there. Ramon? Well, he's got more.
Oh.
In a blanket primary, every voter receives the same ballot, a long one that says every candidate,
Is that
regardless.
the list? You mean the list, not the losers?
Yeah. There's every candidate regardless of party for every nomination to be made at the primary. The Supreme Court found California's version of the blanket primary unconstitutional in 2000.
So was that a Freudian slip? Is that how you really feel about politicians?
Yes, Sigmund Freud.
Petition. Another nomination method is really at local level in American politics. The nomination by petition. Candidates for public offices are nominated by means of petition signed by a certain request numbers of qualified voters in the election district. Nomination by petition is found mostly at local level. The details of the petition process vary widely from state to state, and even from one city to the next. The higher the officers and or the larger the constituency represented by the office, the greater the numbers of the signatures needed for nomination.
Petition, is that like?
That's it.
That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, that's using the paper, that's using the power of the paper and signatures to either get someone on a ballot or to get an issue on a ballot for voting for the electorate, or to having, like for instance, if it's a national race, in order to get on the ballot in every state, you have to have so many, it's a process. In fact, sometimes people will run, I can't remember the last time, I think it was when McCain was running. He actually almost didn't get on the ballot in some of the states because they didn't have enough petitions to the state board of electors. So, yeah, each state has its own requirements. Like for California, if there's an issue you want on the ballot, you have to have, I don't know what the threshold is, but you have to have a certain number, even to get it on the ballot. Because they don't want to waste time in printing.
Yeah, that's what I was, it's just a way for them to be like, alright, so like, if he's able to like get this many votes, like, he won't be wasting our time, you know, by getting us to make all these,
It's really used for student body officers.
to reassure ourselves that he's actually gonna have it running.
You know when people go out basically.
I mean, it's already hard enough with ballot fatigue when people won't even finish the ballot. Can you imagine if it just had a list of every crazy thing that people wanted on the ballot? That would take forever. You know?
What happens if you don't finish the ballot? Like if you
Nothing. They just don't count it. I mean, they don't count the part. They'll count the part you filled in, but everything else is just.
And that concludes today's lesson.
Are we done?